expect that one. The cat's actually a beautiful animal.
He is beautiful. He really is. And he's a sweet kitty. He's not destructive, very
Right?
chilled, laid back. So,
Have you thought about taking him to the vet and get a sedative or something for him till he settles down, or no?
I mean, he's settled. I mean, he's there in the door now, just looking out
Oh,
the back
okay.
window. So, I think it's just adjusting to a new place. So,
Yeah.
and
Now, go ahead.
controlling how much food he eats at one time.
Oh, well, the dog bowls, Melanie noticed last night that the dog bowls were uncovered in the middle of the night, and I'm concerned a coon is coming in and taking the covers off the dog food. Yes, because because the
Oh,
dogs were in bed with me and Melanie.
no.
Yeah, so it was like she said, "Did you uncover the dog?"
Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another strategic alignment event with our friends over at Nativ and YPS. We look forward to these broadcasts by with Rabbi Karmi Ingber. Always got great stuff to share. Always wonderful topics. And today, I believe he'd be talking about the temple, the holy temple, and the differences I think between sacrifices and offerings. I think it's going to be an exciting class and very informative as always. So let's just jump right in and say hello to Rod over at Nativ and Rabbi Ingber. Rod,
Uh,
you're
th-
live on the Noahide World Center social media pages.
yeah, thank you, and we are very appreciative to the World Noahide Center in Jerusalem, their kindness toward Nativ and Rabbi Ingber's dedication to come on here and to help promote uh, Jewish wisdom for the non-Jews. It's an exciting time to be alive and be doing what we're doing.
Oh, for
And
sure.
Rabbi, we really appreciate what you do and your teaching style, and it's always a great reward to have you. So we're just going to turn it over to you, and you can take off when you're ready.
Recording in progress.
You are muted at this moment.
How's that?
You're live 5 by 5.
Okay, guys, good. Welcome, everyone. Good to see you all. Everyone's doing well. So, today, we have the weekly Torah portion we read. So the weekly Torah portion this week is about the offerings, about the sacrifices called korbanos. So I feel I'm going to have to explain this because this needs a lot of explanation. So I want to talk about the idea of the temple. I want to explain because Noachides are allowed to bring offerings too when we had a temple. We'll talk a little about the two types of offerings that they bring and what that would mean and why maybe there's different opinions about it. But let's start from the beginning, because we know that one of the central commandments of being a Noachide is not to believe in idolatry, to believe in one God, right? Not to do idolatry. Now, what is idolatry? This we need to explain, because most people will think that, well, those were stupid people. They're bowing down to idols. How dumb. We're all so cultured and so advanced that we don't have these ideas. But we need to understand them because the danger is very prevalent in this world still. Let's understand. How did idolatry start? Anyone know how idolatry started? I don't know if you had talked about it, or if you guys ever spoke about it. But the way idolatry started was like this. Because it's strange. If you look at the history, idolatry starts 3 generations into society. That's crazy. That means you have Adam, Shais, and then Enosh already. By the generation of Enosh, Shais' son, Seth's son, it says that they started committing idolatry. That's what the verse says. How did that happen? It's very soon. Shouldn't have happened yet. So the origin of idolatry was not the stupid people you see today. It was a very good rationalization, but very messed up too. As all lies, every lie has to have a little bit of truth. So the early idolaters said like this. They said, listen, God created everything in the world. That we know that. And all of these things are like they're God's servants, so to speak. So if you had a case, we had a king, and he sent the messenger to do something, I don't know, whatever, to come to your town and to say the king's decrees or whatever it is, so you would honor the king's messenger. So we should also honor the messengers of God. So if the sun is giving us light, then God is giving us the sun to give us light, so we should thank the sun also. That was the original flaw of the idolaters, which is not a crazy idea because, okay, if you understand it, like, when we say the grace after meals, in Jewish law, we're thanking God after a blessing. We even say, and God should bless the table we ate on. Meaning that the table didn't do anything, but things in the world that give a benefit to us, you should be thankful for. I think I told last week the story about Victor Miller, who put his head in the water. I think I told that story here last week. Victor Miller used to always, I told that story, didn't I, Rod? I'm not sure I told it. I'll repeat it because I didn't tell the story. I don't know if it was a different class I told.
Yeah, you didn't tell the story. I would have remembered that one for sure because I know it. Yeah.
Okay, I thought I did, but there's a story about Victor Miller, who was a great rabbi, and one day he was an older man, and his son walked into the house, his grandson, and he saw the great sage, Victor Miller, with his head submerged in the water, the sink water. Filled the water up with sink with water, and his head was submerged in the sink. And so the grandson's waiting there, like, what's going on? So then finally, after he's waiting for a little bit, waiting, the grandfather's head's in the water. Grandfather pulls his head out of the water. And the grandson says, Grandpa, the great sage of Israel explained this to me. Why was your head submerged into water in the sink? So he said, I'll tell you why. Because today I walked out of the house and I heard somebody saying, oh, the air is so smoggy. I can't even breathe. It's terrible. And I thought to myself, what do you mean? You're complaining about the air? The air is no good? What would life be like without air for a minute? What would it be like without air for 2 minutes? So I put my head in the water to appreciate the air. When I came out, any air was beautiful. I did mention last night. I thought I did. Okay, so it's a great story because it's one of these stories that's not just about like the idea, it's the concept. So Victor Miller used to have a whole discussion about the buttons. He'd appreciate buttons and clothes and realize the things that we have in life that we should be thankful for and acknowledge that. So the early idolaters, they said, well, the sun is God's messenger. He's giving us light. Let's thank the sun. But what happened was soon they forgot the source and they just thanked the sun. not as, saying, oh, I'm so glad God gave me clothes and God gave me air, but thank you, air, thank you, clothes, and making them a separate entity to themselves. That's the origin of idolatry. Okay. Now, this is very, very real. Let's say, like, in Christianity, there's these discussions about the devil fighting with God. That's idolatrous. God doesn't have, there's no other power that can be competing against God in any way, shape, or form. And this is where idolatry, you have to understand, it wasn't just dumb people, it was very, very smart people. Such smart people that knew how to hook into spiritual powers in the world and manipulate them. That was also part of idolatry. So, for example, let's say God creates a spiritual force that makes something happen in the world. What they call in Hebrew a malach. In English, they call it an angel. I don't like those names because it has all the connotations that we have that are really off. The word malach is from the word action, malacha, an action. And these are the spiritual rules that God makes to create the world, or to run the world, but they have no power of their own. It's like when you look at the law of gravity. Let's say I drop something and it falls down. And you say, wow, who did that? It was the God of gravity. That's idolatry. What is gravity? Gravity is the rule that God made that it should fall down. And there are spiritual forces that also have laws and rules. And once you disconnect them from the source in any way, you are now giving power to something else in the world. And that is idolatry or bordering on idolatry. There's a lot of details here. I imagine that in some of the courses you've done goes through what exactly you can do, can't do. But for the enlightened people that you all strive to be and all are in potential of what you want to understand is you want to realize there's no other power than Hashem. And anything else, all the forces, those are things that God creates to run his world. And they're really, in a certain sense, they conceal God in a certain way, because you don't see, when I drop something, I don't see that God is saying, oh, this is going to drop right now. I see create a law and the thing functions according to that law. And foolish people can give it its own entity, its own power. And that's already either idolatry or bordering on idolatry. Now, also to realize, the idea of the Holy Temple or a temple in Jerusalem, in a certain sense, should give us a question. But God is everywhere. You can't limit God. What do you mean God is a house? What does that mean? So we don't understand. From God's perspective, there's nothing that can separate God's complete existence everywhere. However, God chose to create a place in the world where his presence can be clearly felt. Okay, and that really was the job of humanity. In other words, as people became worse and worse in the beginning of time, God's presence was less and less felt. Came along Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all the generations that brought God's presence down and can be experienced in the world. And that's what happened when we got the Torah, and God's presence was felt in the tabernacle. And eventually, when we went to the land of Israel, was now in a set place called the Beit HaMikdash, the temple. Again, doesn't mean God's presence is not everywhere. It just means there's a place where you can feel it. It's going to be palpable. It will affect us. So much so that people, when they walked into the temple, they came out with divine inspiration. That's where you get your divine inspiration. Now, the temple that Solomon built, that Shlomo built, was for all people, as he says there. He says God should answer when anyone, Jewish, not Jewish, turn their hearts towards the place where God's presence is felt in the temple, and they pray God should answer their prayers. So much so that the Talmud says that if the nations of the world understood what the temple was doing for them, not only would they not destroy the temple, they would have had guards guarding it 24/7. I don't know if you guys realize it's an amazing thing. When King Solomon built the temple, there were no natural catastrophes in the entire world the whole time. There was no famine. So you can blame it on global warming. It's this, it's that. Okay, everyone has everything to blame it on, other than maybe the way we're acting or any other things. That's not obviously a possibility in the minds of modern man. No. It's only something else. So it's nothing to do with anything we do, how we act. No. But that's the foolishness of people. And of course, the reason why they have a leg to stand on is because there are foolish people who say, oh, I know why this happened because you did this, you did that. Unless you're a prophet, you don't know why a particular thing happened. There are many, many reasons. However, when the temple stood, the whole world had gained from this incredible phenomenon, the reality that God wanted, that his presence should be manifest in the world. Now, we had 2 temples. First temple parallels Abraham. Second one parallels Isaac. The third one's going to parallel Jacob, and that's going to be the lasting temple. 2 temples were both destroyed. The third temple, when it will be built, will never be destroyed. That will last forever. That will move the world into the different levels of what this world will go to and what it'll be. Now, when that happens, a person's going to want to bring offerings, like in the which I said to you before. A Noahide has to be careful for the not to attribute any power to anything else. And when the temple is built, the Noahide who wants to send offerings to the temple, it will be accepted. It will be brought up in Jerusalem. Great, amazing. But now I got to explain, what is this idea of an offering? In English, what do we call it? We call it sacrifices. Now, that's a very dangerous terminology. What am I sacrificing exactly? What does that mean? Sacrifice. I'm giving up of something I need, and now I don't really want to do it. Kind of sacrifice means like I kind of don't want to do it, but I got to do it, which is counter the most basic rule of a sacrifice. Means it has to come from your deepest will. That's what a sacrifice means. It has to come from your. So when we say in English the word sacrifice, it almost has a mistaken connotation from the very beginning. This is something I don't want to do, but I got to do. That's not accepted sacrifice. It's got to be that this is what you want to do. So sacrifice may be a very bad translation. As a matter of fact, it is. It's the wrong translation. The word korban is the word karev, to get close, to bring me close. That's what it's about. A korban brings me close. It's to bring me in a connection to God. So maybe offering is a better word in English. In Hebrew, the word is korban, is a vehicle of closeness. That's what it is. Now let's explain this a second, because here again has the same potential problem. What am I giving? See, when I give something to a friend, it's because they lack something. I'm giving you because you like getting it, because you like the gift I gave you. It's something that you want. So obviously, we're talking about Hashem. If you misunderstand what an offering you're doing is, we're going to have almost an idolatrous understanding. Because if you think God needs our offerings, then we said he has needs. That's already idolatry. That's wrong. The same thing, which you have to understand, and this is really where unfortunately, a lot of religions make a very, very grave mistake. They made this grave mistake in the following. We say that, let's say Hashem loves us. He created the world, he wants to give to us. Okay, that's true. So now the next step people say is, oh, So I relate to God, and therefore he loves me, I love him, and therefore he's like me. He's like he's a person, God forbid, because he has things I can understand. When somebody, let's say, for example, someone feels compassion, right? You're walking down the street and you see a person and he's got, he's got missing a leg and he's got a broken arm and he's filled with boils all over his body, and he puts out his hand and says, "Give me some money, please." What happens? You have tremendous compassion because you feel bad. So stirs up in you this compassion where I have to give him. If I don't give him something, you know what? I feel bad, right? So now you say, oh, wait a minute. God has compassion. God's compassion is not the same compassion we just talked about. The compassion that I have when I see this person means that it affected me, and I now need to give to them. And although I'm giving to them, but it affected me, and now I'm also in need of helping them. So we got to get that out of our heads. And this is where a lot of people make a great mistake. Yes, Hashem is loving, compassionate, all ways of perfection possible. However, we don't understand the way God acts. We know that's the way he chose to relate to us. He chose to relate to us in a way of compassion, a way of love. That's what we understand. That's the way he set the world up. But don't think we understand God, that now and this is the problem. I mean, the craziest thing, people wearing their gods as symbols, like something that they can understand. Idolatry means that there is a place where the person needs to understand, quantify, limit. This is what it is. I got God in my back pocket. God forbid. You have nothing then. You have a person. You have nothing. That's not God. We don't understand why we can't understand God in any way, shape, or form. We can understand only the way he chooses to interact with us. But he needs nothing. So what am I giving him when I bring an offering? He doesn't need anything. So what am I giving? What I'm really giving is I'm saying I want to be connected. I want to come close. If I realize that the source of everything is God, and I want to connect, then that is what he's allowing us to do by giving of ourselves. Let me explain this a moment. A very deep idea. People ask a question. There's different phrases. One phrase is, birds of a feather flock together. And another phrase says, opposites attract. Well, which one's right? Which one's right? I mean, they're completely in contradiction. Which one is true? Which one's right? So you have to understand like this. If I'm like, it's a hot day and I've been running and I'm really hot, I want to drink what? A hot cup of tea? No. I want cold drink. If I'm cold, I want a hot drink. Why? Because I'm looking for a completion. There's a completion that a person has. Okay? If I'm hot, I need the cold to complete. When, let's say, a couple get together, so on one hand, the male, female, it's better when they have similarities because they understand the world they're each coming from. But the idea of a couple is to become one. And becoming one means that they are completing each other. So the male, female, which are two opposite components, they fulfill each other. So yes, on one hand, you're talking to somebody, a friend, who's not completing you, but what happens is that they are like you, so you get along with them. Birds of a feather flock together. But when you're looking for completion, you need to have the part that's fulfilling you. So when a couple gets together, the male and female coming together, that means now, like a hot day getting a cold drink, now you become together, you become one. That is the deeper meaning of when a person becomes unified with their soulmate. Okay? Very, very important idea to understand this. In a certain sense, a little different, but in a certain sense, the idea of an offering is realizing my source is God and I want to connect back to my source. It's becoming whole. God doesn't need it. Doesn't need anything. It's not for him. It's for me. It's for me, for the place where I say I want to come. So maybe it is a sacrifice. Maybe it's an expensive thing you're taking and you're giving up. Let's say, for example, in life, you have something that, is enticing to you. It's going to be a lot of money, but it's the wrong thing to do. Did you make a sacrifice by not doing it? Right? Imagine you have you could make a lot of money, but it would cause you'd have to cheat or do something that would really be against what you know to be right. So is it proper to call that a sacrifice? Well, in one way, yes, and in one way, no. In one way, it's yes, because you've sacrificed what you could have had that would have been inappropriate, or that money you could have made. But on the other hand, it's not really a sacrifice, because the thing you would have lost if you would have cheated would have been much greater. I prefer to be this person who is this righteous person, because that's the real me. And if I do the other thing, I'm actually giving up the greater thing of value, who I am. So the word sacrifice in English is like a weird kind of word. Yes, you're whatever you're bringing, the offering you're bringing is costing you money. But what you're trying to do is you're saying, I am connecting to my source, and that's where I really belong. That's what God lets us do. Let's bring offerings. The offering is a statement that I'm really offering myself. You see, we have items in the world. We have things that we own. And the things we own are God-given to us that allow us to use them in a way to make the world better. In other words, it's not an accident you have your car. There was a rabbi in Israel. He used to call the car the mitzvah mobile, the mobile to go and do mitzvahs. And he used to tell people, listen, in Israel, I mean, like when I used to live in Israel, and when I lived in Israel, even today, not everyone has cars. In America, you don't have a car. Like, what do you mean have a car? How do you function? In Israel, a lot of people don't have cars. So what would happen? You have a car. You bought your car. It's like, great. I remember when I first bought my first car in Israel. I lived in Israel 5 years. I didn't have a car. I bought a car. Now all of a sudden you're driving around and you start seeing people. This guy needs a ride. This guy needs to go here. I can help you. All of a sudden I have this item that I can change the world with, which is connected to me. It's mine. It's not mine it's mine. I can do what I want with it. It's mine that now is an extension of me. And I could use it like I use myself to do things that are good. So bringing an offering is really bringing me. I want to connect. I want to come close. I realize that that's my source. That's what I'm doing. Now, Noahide said could bring two kinds of offerings. This is very fascinating, because many opinions, I think, say that Noahides bring what's called an ola. An ola is an offering that goes completely to God. There is an opinion that says that Noahides could bring shlomim too. Shlomim are offerings that were brought partially brought up, partially were eaten by the Kohanim, and partially were eaten by the people. And that's a much harder thing to do. It's much easier for us to go and to say, okay, I'm going to be completely giving to God. It's much harder for us to go into eat something and sort of think we're doing something religious and spiritual at the time. It's much harder. It's much, much harder. That's a very, very, I think that's why there's a discussion can that be done? But Jews have to do that. Jews have to basically make sure that their physical actions are also, even their pleasure they're taking is done in a way that that moment it's a spiritual act. So since there are two opinions here, I think that it behooves you to kind of think about, can I do that? One part is to feel I want to give myself, and one part is to say, can I, in all of my actions, when I do, even when I enjoy what I'm doing, can I do that in such a way that it's bringing me closer to God? Right? Sometimes when you do all the things for our own pleasure, we kind of lose perspective of God. I'm doing this is me. And the second level of the offering that's a shlamim is to be able to even to do that. To like, when I'm eating the food now, this food is from God. Wow. This quality is from God. This pleasure is from God. And having that connection there. That's why it's fascinating. There's two different opinions. I'm sharing them both with you because hopefully when the third temple is built, soon, especially as you see situations in life unfolding where all the things are playing out that may happen a lot sooner than people think. So you want to bring your offerings then. So you'll certainly bring the offerings of the olos, the ones that go completely up to the heavens, but you also hopefully will be able to bring the ones that will bring shlomim, that are whole in every way, even the ways that we can use them. That's the idea of having a understanding that God doesn't need anything. That's idolatrous. Other powers, that's wrong. That's how the thing started. There's one source of everything. And there's one source of us. And the ability to bring an offering is the recognition that is our source. And we want to get close to our source. And hopefully when the third temple is built, we'll be able to bring offerings quickly in our time. Okay. Open up to questions, ideas, comments. Any questions? And if it's not on this topic, feel free to put other topics.
Can a Noahide make a sacrifice somewhere else in the temple?
Good question. Good question. I actually believe the answer is yes. I actually believe the answer is, I will double check that, but I actually think that the answer is yes. A Jew cannot, but I did see. Let me hold off on giving that because that could be a very relevant question. So let me hold off on giving that practically. I got to double check that. But
what was the question?
The question was, can a Noachide, a Jew is not allowed to bring an offering any place other than the temple. That's called the Bamos. Bamos were, people were able to, before the temple was built, they were able to bring offerings wherever they were. Not all kinds, only certain kinds they were allowed to bring. So, for example, when the Jews, once the tabernacle was established in the desert, you could only bring the tabernacle. Then there was 14 years where the tabernacle was in a place called Gilgal. When they came to the land of Israel, it wasn't established in its set place yet. And the bamot, the personal altars were permissible. Then for 369 years, the tabernacle stayed in Shiloh, in the city of Shiloh. And now again, the personal altars were forbidden. Then when Shiloh was destroyed in the story of Eli, and the tabernacle was moved to Nov, so then Bamos were again permissible for how many years? Not a lot. Not a lot. I don't know how many years. 40. I forgot exactly the number. Then the temple was built. Once the temple was built, the Jews cannot bring an offering anyplace else other than temple. It's called a bamot.
Right.
That's forbidden.
So can I address that?
Yeah, so I will double check that. But as far as I remember, I do think that Noachides are actually allowed, but I'll have to go through exactly the question.
Yeah, they are allowed to bring an offering anywhere in the world.
Yeah,
That's very unique. They are allowed to do that. And there is actually That's actually happened a couple of times in Jerusalem in the past 15 years, and it was actively supervised by a group of rabbis, and it was done on the Mount of Olives, I think, overlooking the Temple Mount. And
Well,
so,
like I say, that's amazing. I want to just double check when I tell you practically. The reason why I want to double check, not that it's wrong, but sometimes there's different opinions about exactly.
oh yeah,
But practically, if that is the case, I actually I know I saw an opinion that say that that's correct. I want to double check everyone agrees to that. But if it is, it's very, very exciting.
yeah, yeah.
Very,
Tar.
yeah, sorry.
Is it going to be specified exactly what the Noahides can bring as an offering?
Yes. Right now, it's a matter of debate whether or not they could definitely bring olos. The question about shlomim, that's a debate now. But what happens is but once you have a Sanhedrin, the Sanhedrin is the high court. They will decide all the arguments that there are. This is a very crucial point here. When there was the temple and there was the high court of Sanhedrin, there were no arguments. There were no difference of opinions because it was always determined by the high court. Once the temple was destroyed and you didn't have the high court, it's sitting in Jerusalem. So then you have cases of disagreement. So when the temple is built, that will be finalized by the Sanhedrin. Can the Noahides bring the Shlamim too? Yeah, great question. Good. Very good.
I have a question about the sacrifice of Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
When Cain he was supposed he didn't give the best of his crop, but if he gave the best, was that acceptable, or was he supposed to give an animal sacrifice, a kosher animal sacrifice?
Great question. From the text, it doesn't sound that the problem was not the best stuff. He gave the leftovers. He thought that was the thing he should give God, was the leftovers, the pits and peels and those things. But it doesn't sound like it wouldn't specifically, because there are other offerings other than animals. There are animal offerings. There's wheat offerings. There's barley offerings. There's bird offerings. So there are various things in the world that are used as part of this process. Wine is brought, oil is brought. There seems to be no complaint about the idea of it not being an animal. And generally, an animal has a certain quality that others don't, which is that it has a life force. It's much easier to relate to the fact that we have a life force too, and we're connecting our life force to God. But an animal, therefore, is maybe more powerful. But however, as we know, it's the poor person who didn't bring an animal sacrifice was considered very, very great because he brought what he could. That's the rule. The rule is that it's not a question of, it's got to be a bigger. It's what your intention is. If your intention is good, and the person could bring a little bit of a wheat offering, it's much greater than if someone with bad intentions bringing an animal. God doesn't need either one. It's not, as I said before. It's all where your heart is. So therefore, Cain could have brought. What he would have brought would have been fine if it wasn't the fact that he had the wrong concept, which was to bring the leftovers, which showed he had a rationale, which was like, okay, so what do you do with this stuff? But it comes from a place of a lowly part of a person where they don't want to give up something. Again, it's the same idea. It's like, why am I giving this? You don't need it. So let's say you're giving somebody, give an example in terms of a person that you like or someone you're giving. So, if somebody, is not obviously the same in any way, shape, or form, but just as an analogy, if you go and you give a wealthy person, you want to thank him, you give him a gift, so he's wealthy anyway. What's the difference from giving him more expensive or less expensive? There is no difference. But the difference is that, did you care? Was it something that was valuable to you?
Anybody else have any questions you'd like to ask? Sandy, William, Jacob, Rob,
I have more questions if you need
Natalio,
questions.
go ahead.
Okay. About the altar for a Noahide, if he wants to do a sacrifice, what's the altar supposed to be like? Where is it supposed to be? How does it work?
Yeah, so
I'm sorry. I would think that we probably should answer it on another night because there is a halakha to it. It's not that complicated, but probably, Rabbi, when you take a look at the source, you could find that out, wouldn't you think?
yeah. I'd like to give you very specifics about it
Yeah.
because if you can do it, why not?
Yeah. As a matter of fact,
I wish I could do it. I mean, it's like, so if you can do it, like, so I just want to go through the details of it. I mean, there's a few, and you have to go through which parts. There are two different kinds of altars. One's called a matzeva, one's called a mizbeach. One is one stone, and one is called multiple stones together. Jews cannot do it on one stone anymore. Whole story with that. Maybe Noachites can. I want to just check if they can. So there's a lot of components to this, but people aren't. Look, I don't know people are doing it. I mean, I don't know when it's been done, but why not? If Noachide really can do it, and there's no other hesitations. Like sometimes with it's like the world has changed a lot, and so there's a lot of hesitancy about a lot of things. And you have to know when you're doing something new if this is the best way to do it or not. So that's why I wanted to check. Like, for example, like even going up to the Temple Mount. So it's a very big problem. It's on the wrong place. And it's not. Now, some people claim they know where to go. It's not. But there's there are mainstream rabbis say, well, you better not play around with that. So everything here, when you're talking about things that have sort of fallen out from normal activity, you have to see why did that happen, and how do you deal with it. So I think it's a great thing. I like to go through in detail from the halachic point of view and give you more details on how to do it. Because if you can do it and you want to do it, great. Why not?
Hey, Rabbi, we have somebody online asking about the question of offering money. How does that play into the matter?
So offering money is Noachites do have the mitzvah of tzedakah, have the mitzvah of giving charity. And they should give it to probably to either poor people that they know that are need it, or to organizations that deal with these things, give it out. And if good organizations that would give out the money and know the halachas of where to give it out and how to give it out. But so charity is according to most opinions something that
charity is not the same as an offering, though, right?
Right, not the same as an offering, but because charity, an offering is it's going from you to God. Charity is supposed to be from you to people who have needs. Says why there was a discussion between the Roman governor Turnus Rufus and Rabbi Akiva, and he said, if God loves the poor, why doesn't he support them? So he said it's for us to be able to go and to merit to do this. So if God gave you money and someone else didn't give money to, he wants you to help the person who doesn't have. Now, there are certain parameters you want to make sure you're giving to the right people. There are phonies in the world, there are this and that. You have to try to make sure you get in the right place. But charity is, the offering is you to God, which again, he doesn't need it, but he's allowing you to come close. And charity is where God wants you to fix up the situations in the world and help people in need. It's to other people.
Very well said. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Yes.
Nancy?
I was just thinking this year on the Parsha, I don't know if it makes sense to anybody else, but I was thinking that when it says it's a pleasing aroma, and I thought, for God being our Father, for us as his children to be able to come and admit that error or let go of that error or that thing that's driving us away from him is a pleasing aroma to him. You don't want your kids suffering. You want them thriving. And when we can come and say, you know, I messed up, I admit this, whatever, we're allowed to draw close. We're allowed to be who he created us to be. And I thought that'd make me really happy if I saw my kids, you know, able to do that.
Right. Well put. Very well put. Yeah. 100%. That's what it says. I mean, like, you know, it says that yeah, you said good. You said very good. All right. Okay, I think we're maybe a low on questions today. That's okay. So,
I have one.
Yeah,
Like,
please.
yes, it's about idolatry. You talked about idolatry.
Yeah.
For idolatry, what is worship? What is there a checklist to?
Yeah, there is. In
be considered?
generally speaking, there are anything that, in terms of worship, there's two different things here. I talked about the conceptual ideas of the thought. What is punishable, you know, by a capital punishment, are generally two approaches. One is any idol that's worshipped in the way that the idol is worshipped is considered idol worship. So, for example, there was a Roman god they used to throw rocks on. They would throw rocks in front of it. That was their worship. So that would be forbidden because that's the way it's worshipped. If it's not, so that's one obligation. The second obligation is any of the four main ways that the Jews did service, which is offering, a bowing, an offering Haktorah, Ishtachava, bowing, what? Libate, Nisuch, right? And
Incense.
What? Fourth one.
Incense.
No, incense would be under the offering, the burning things. The fourth one is 1 second. Ishtachava, Haktorah, Nisuch, and I forgot the fourth one. Maybe it's could be incense is separate. I forgot the fourth one. Yeah, you know, as a synagogue rabbi, I don't get the question so much. Like, you know, how do I when I have offerings? So, but what was the fourth? I forgot the fourth one. I told the fourth one out. Bowing bowing to an idol, even if that's not the way it's served, is obligated. Bringing an offering, Haktorah, offering something up. Pouring nisuch, pour the water, the wine, and the fourth one is maybe it's the throwing the blood. Maybe zrika, could be zrika, could be the throwing of the blood. I got because that was part of the service. It was really a certain part. The main part of the service was actually throwing the blood, because the blood is where it's connected to the life force. So the throwing of the blood, the Kohanim used to put the blood on the altar, because it's a very deep topic, but how the blood is the area where the life force is connected. Because when you look at a person, it's amazing. How do you have the body, which is physical, and the soul? Where do they connect? So it's a very deep topic, but they're connected somehow through the idea of blood and the blood that's moving around the body. So
can I ask Talo something? Were you asking how do Noahides worship, or what were you talking about?
No, just worship. Worship.
What is
for idolatry?
For idolatry, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
What's forbidden for idolatry? So again,
yeah.
The answer is twofold. The answer is forbidden for idolatry. Again, other things are forbidden also. For example, what it says that if a person would take the idol and kiss it, hug it, even though there might not be a death penalty for that, it's still forbidden. So what I'm answering you now is what is like the worst of the worst. The worst of the worst is either how the idol is worshipped or one of the four ways that is done in the proper Jewish practice of bringing offering to God, which is, again, is offering a Torah, bowing, pouring libation, the nisuch, and I think the fourth one may be throwing the blood. I have to just double check that. Good. Yeah, Tar.
I know that I don't know of anybody that bows down, that worships their money, but there's so many, especially young people nowadays, but I mean people that do not know God, or even there's people that think they do, but their money is everything. That's their redeemer. That's their healer. That's their provider, and it's just like, I know they're not actually worshiping the money, but they're put all the power into that money.
Right.
And how does that play into this?
Good point. So money is called the most general of all desires, because people feel they can buy all their desires with their money. So that's why money is something people chase after, because let's say a person wants power and this guy wants, desire. So there are a lot of different areas of things they'll want that are called their desires. Money is an overarching thing because the sense is they can buy power, they can buy desire, they can buy this, they can buy that. The money can give them all the things they want. So money is therefore a very powerful desire, because even though you can't eat the money, but the sense is that it gives you all these things. Now, where it's connected to idolatry is what you're saying is because the people who feel that this will give me the power to do what I want to separate from God, or to deny God, so that is a form of idolatry in a certain sense, although it's obviously not the classic sense, but in terms of the mind, it is, right? In the mind, it's like, it's a breakaway. But I'll tell you something even crazier, which is that people relate to technology in the same way. People relate to technology, instead of understanding that technology is, you're getting the drop in the bucket of understanding God's infinite wisdom in his creation, people view it as, okay, now we're going to be able to solve the problems that, if they do believe in God, that we can solve it without God. So it's absurd. They're turning technology and scientific advancement, which is understanding God's world. It's called the flip side of the Torah wisdom. They're taking that and they're thinking that that's going to create for them a power against God. So it's standing by money. If people want money to do the right thing in the world and say, okay, God, please give me money so I can support my family, I can help people, I can do the right thing, I could even have the confidence and the ease of my life to serve God in the proper way and to make the world a better place. So then that pursuit is proper. It's a good thing. But when people look at it as, this will give me my power, and I will become a separate entity of power that cannot be affected by God, so to speak, that's kind of like idolatry in the mind. It's power, 100%. Good question, Tar. Very good.
Interesting proof of science becoming a religion to people is during COVID, you would always hear, "I believe in science."
Yeah.
Science is supposed to be about facts. I believe in facts, not science. I have never thought about believing in science, but it's becoming a religion to people now.
Well, the problem, I'm sorry, people are writing, Ron, I have my glasses. You can read it what people are
Yeah, I'll read. Jacob says, these are specific forms of idolatry that are forbidden because done in the temple, bowing, slaughtering, burnt offerings, burning anything, libation. Sources, Noahide, course 53, in Perkei Shoshanim's course. So,
so what was the fourth one he said, though? What was the fourth one?
Libations. Burnt offering and libations.
Libations one, burning, right? We said that. That's a
Bowing, slaughtering, burnt
Slaughtering.
offerings, libations.
Yeah, okay. So
Thanks, appreciate it.
Rabbi, I have a question, if I could.
yeah, please.
Yes, this is something that's been on my mind for a while. I struggle with weight, and one of my, I guess, cocoons is that I love to eat, which most people do. My thing is, I know that overeating, glutton, they call it gluttony,
Right.
is a sin in Hashem's eyes, correct?
Overeating, yeah. I mean, yes, in a certain sense. In other words, what's called overeating when a person's full, and to eat after that is definitely not the right thing to do. It's a wrong thing to do. It's not called eating. To eat a lot is itself not necessarily forbidden, but it may be an imbalance of priorities, and then it's going to have a place where it's going to affect you negatively.
Because I'm trying to improve myself on it, and it's been something I struggle with, but the only thing I know to do is just try to get better ways not to eat, because I don't want to continually sin all the time doing that,
Right. So, I mean, I think that, there's a lot of reasons why people do things, and you have to get into understanding a little bit why you're doing what you're doing. Sometimes people, everyone likes to eat. It's there's certain fundamental desires that a person has is one of them. So everyone likes to. The question is, though, very often when we overeat, we're compensating for missing something in our lives. Then we have to know that, be aware of that. It doesn't mean that you don't have to put boundaries on things that even because sometimes we know we're doing the wrong thing, but now we're in a habit mode. So if you've been doing it for a while, then it's probably second nature to you. So you're probably going to have to do both at the same time. One is the intellectual understanding of why am I doing this? I have a natural, people have naturally like to eat, but why am I doing more than I should? Right? You see, it's a fascinating thing. You see, babies never eat more than they should. They don't. They don't do it. Animals don't eat more than they should either. It's a natural thing. There's a lacking. The process of all physical desires follows the same pattern. It's one pattern, which is one of the deepest reasons you understand spiritual pleasure is much greater than physical pleasure. All physical pleasure is I have a lacking and I get it filled. Lacking and filled. That's always the way it works. So if a person, loves steak and they eat a meal and they're full and you come to them and say, here's another steak. An hour ago, that was like the greatest thing in the world. Now they couldn't stand it because they're full. But go to them tomorrow, they might want it again. So all physical desires are based on a lacking and then being full. So when a person eats, or an animal eats, or a baby eats, when they're full, they don't want any more. So when you're full, if you need to keep eating, you have another lacking that you're trying to fill up. Okay, so you got to understand on the intellectual way, what am I trying to fill in by keep eating? I have other lackings because the hunger is gone. So I'm now substituting other things for that. You got to know what that is. And then two, it's not enough to know, you have to create parameters to stop doing it, because even when you know something, it's very hard because we want something. You become habituated to it. Our bodies want it, this and that. You'll have to create the fences to help guard yourself that you won't overeat. And then there are programs for it. There are a lot of different things, and they're worthwhile because but it's not enough. The program, you got to also figure out a little bit like what deeper things do you need in your life that would be more satisfying and more proper.
Thank you, Rabbi.
My pleasure. Yeah, another question.
Yes, this is a little bit more personal. I have two daughters here. I'm living in Peru, in Montreal. I used to live in Montreal before. I was raised in Montreal. Well, here in Peru, they have a habit of, in the school, of praying every day. They pray. And it caught me by surprise with my older daughter. When I found out it's been a couple of years since, they used to, I told her to be respectful, not to participate, but to be respectful during the prayer. Now I have done my smallest daughter, she's 5 years old. She started in school, and I'm a little bit worried. I'm wondering what do you say about it? Do you have any advice? Because I know they're going to pray now. I didn't know before. I wasn't raised here, but all the schools, they pray in the morning when they start their.
And they all say JC, and they say
and Trinity and that stuff.
They don't pray generally.
No, they don't. So for the first one, probably my surprise. I didn't know. I wasn't raised here, but now I know that what's going to happen. I told them, not to do all the Christmas and all the saint stuff with her, because their activities are probably going to be like that. I'm just to do something else, but I can't tell them not to pray every day. That's and I don't want her to be put out of the class or something like that, for that time. But I can't talk to her. She's too small for me to explain to her, for her to understand yet.
She's 5, you said?
Yeah, she's 5.
And they make them say the words out loud?
I don't know how they do it, but I know that the teacher prays and they probably say amen or something like that. And I'm a bit worried. It went okay with my older daughter because, as soon as I found out, I told her, to be respectful, not to participate. And already I've told her about the Torah and about that stuff, so she understands. But I'm a bit worried, it's repetitive.
It's an issue. Can you will the teachers, if you talk to them, will they be against you, or will they try to work with you?
I'm sure they will try to work with me. That's what happened with my oldest daughter.
I think then the first thing to talk to, if they're going to work with you, and again, that's not so simple because it depends who you're getting. You can get people they say yes, and they really have other intentions but if you can talk to the teacher first and say, listen, I have, I believe in, the Torah as its original form. I keep the love of Noach. I have different this and that, and however you get into it, then they decide. But try to find out if they can work with you, because if they can work with you, and then your daughter could, pray, and you could tell her, who she's really praying to. But you got to find out what's going on there, because if they have idols up there, it's a problem. They may have idols. They probably do.
Usually they have a picture. In my daughter's class, my oldest daughter, they always had a picture of JC in the classroom. So you're not supposed to pray in front of a picture anyways, right?
Yeah. Listen, find out the details of what they're doing, and you can email me. Rabbi Ingber at Gmail. Rabbi Ingber at gmail.com. Find out the details of what they're doing, and I'll try to give you a way how to navigate. But you gotta get the details of what they're doing there. Okay. And so you have to talk to the teacher, see if they're willing to work with you. Because if they are, then we can find a way that your daughter could make her own prayers, and then you could use it as a learning opportunity where you could tell her, this is what we don't believe, and this is why we don't believe it, and this and this and this and this and this and that. God can't be a person. And like a kid will be like, there's certain things that are kind of obvious that people, when they already develop certain philosophies, they develop them. But you tell a kid, well, how could God be a person? That can't be. So you can tell that in a nice way and say, okay, they don't understand that, and we're gonna, and that they have their own beliefs. They don't really understand so you can then give her an ability to maybe to pray, to God when they're praying, and not to and use it as a learning opportunity. So there's probably the best way to do it is get the details of what is going on now, if the teacher's willing to work with you, and then I can maybe give you some direction on how to tell her to do things that would be okay for her level, and then we could actually make it a very good learning opportunity. It could be really good, actually. We
Thank
really
you.
good. If you explain it to your child well, because you see, this thing you have to understand here. When people naturally want to be part of a crowd. That's the way it is. Social pressure, and a kid for sure, adults also. So now when I take somebody out of the crowd, there's two things that can happen. One is, or three things really. One is they don't want to do that, and they'll just say, I want to be part of the crowd. But if you do pull them out of the crowd, there's two ways they can handle it. One is they can become very insular, and everyone else is bad, everyone else is that, and that's not good. The other way to do it is to have her understand who she is, what she's about, and get a healthy way to relate to the other people, but defining herself better. So that's why it can be a very good learning opportunity if you do it right, and she's going to feel like, okay, I know who I am, I know what I believe, it makes a lot of sense, and people don't understand that, fine, I'm not, somebody wants at some other point, I could explain it to them, but I don't have to. Do what you do, I do what I do. Okay, but what I'm saying? It's very important how you're gonna convey the message to her, to give her personal strength, and not to create it that it's me against them. Because it's gonna be me against them, it's not gonna go well in the end.
Thank you. It worked out with my oldest daughter, but I don't know what's going to happen with my youngest daughter. Hopefully, everything's going to be.
I'm sure it will be. If you have a good intention for it and you pray for it and you try your best, it's going to work out. But just find the details and what the teacher is willing to do, and tell me. We'll find a way to make it work. All right.
Okay.
Very good. All right. Okay. Great to see you all. And next week, I guess next week.
Next
Sunday.
week, same time, same bat channel.
Got Perm this week, but everything should be okay by Sunday.
Well,
Excellent.
at least, hopefully a hangover won't be too bad.
I want to hangover. A few days.
Okay, you guys, anybody wants to stay on overtime to answer any other questions, we'll at least give that an opportunity. If you feel like all the questions were answered, then we'll close it down after Rabbi Ingber goes. And we want to.
I'm going to sign out from the Noahide World Center, but we will be back. It sounds like next week, same time, with Rabbi Karmi Ingber and our friends at YPS Nativ with more strategic alignment events. So we hope to see you then. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, everybody. Bye for now.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Okay, guys, we're going to